I'm Morgan Weistling. I am traditionally an oil painter and I do fine art. I make my living actually just selling paintings. I've been doing that for like 100 years. They asked me to do a demonstration and there's just no way to do a good, decent oil in this short of a time. So what I usually do is pastel. And the reason is because it's exactly like oil painting. It's got so many of the same elements to it. I found out because I do a lot of pastel, I right away started doing digital painting kind of super easy. That's me doing digital just like I'm about to do with the pastel. It's exactly the same. I think just watching this kind of stuff is almost just like watching normally what an artist does as a demonstration. You walk away getting nothing out of it because you've just watched a magic trick. And it's like, I could sit here right now and try to just impress you with a mediocre pastel drawing. But I'm actually going to try to talk this through so you really can maybe get something out of this, even in a short period of time. And there's no trick to doing this. It's just drawing. That's all this is. Pastel is drawing, painting is drawing. You look at my oil paintings, it's all drawing. So that's what I'm going to do today. Now, I'm a Western artist, so that's why all these guys are cowboys, I don't know. I keep getting drawn to that guy, so I think I'll do this one. So what I do, just like when I'm doing digital, is I just sort of put something down like I would if I was doing oil. I would put an oil wash down. And these are a mix of different kinds of pastels that I actually use. They're just a big hodgepodge. What I do is I'm going to just sort of get it toned so I have something to work over that's not just the gray. So some of this will actually stay in the final painting here. And I do consider this more like painting than I do drawing. So I'm just getting down sort of an average. I work in averages, and I'm just getting a feel for where it's actually going to go. I actually do my pastel heads pretty large because it's really hard to do detail when your stupid pastel is like a little chunk like that. So what's nice about it is, like oil, I can still go over it and change things. You're not absolutely set. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub this into the paper so it's not all loose. I'm just using my palm. I'm looking at it. I can say, yeah, a lot of that might actually stay. And I won't have to do anything but just sort of render and turn the form a little bit. And it'll almost be done. So what I'm going to do is start off just sort of getting a little bit more of the eye socket areas. Just a little bit again. It's almost just toning right now again. Just to have a little bit underneath there that's closer to the value. By the end of this, it'll be all over my face. I'm going to look like the guy in the photograph, actually. And so now I've kind of got an idea where I want to begin. And this is with everything I ever do, is I just pick a spot and I start mapping it out, squinting down, just looking at things in a very general kind of like overall simplified way. And I'm going to kind of just begin trying to get some kind of accuracy right off the bat so that I can judge everything else by it. So what I'm doing is I'm squinting down, just sort of judging some shapes abstractly. And one of the things about how I was trained and the way that I still work today is I don't really use my brain a whole lot. I'm in robot mode right now, and I'm not really thinking a whole lot about what it is I'm doing. I'm just sort of reacting overall to some shapes that I'm looking at, kind of like abstract way. So I'm trying to get something that I can actually recognize that will be something I can now judge everything else by. Like a middle tone pastel that I picked.
Go get Morgan's painting course at proko.com/Weistling. He teaches painting without a brain, a simple, easy to follow process that will help beginners take on oil painting. And it's 20% off now through July 6th, along with all our other courses for the summer sale.
The way that I know if I'm getting somewhere is not to move on. Like right now, there may be a real urge on the part of everybody would be, go ahead, draw this eye, go ahead, get the nose in. But what I like to do is establish something that I know is actually correct, and then I'll be able to really feel good about judging everything else from it. So I'm going to actually get into it a little bit more than this. This is my drawing as though this is charcoal, and then I'm going to use a middle tone. I'll use this as my middle tone. He's got a pinkish face anyways. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start filling this in. And then I can start rendering it even now and find a decent. So I'm using these other ones, the 2 light ones and the 3 light ones, as like it's an eraser. And this is my charcoal. And so I'm just gonna be mushing it around until I actually get something that I can say, okay, that's the eye. It's a little slow moving in the beginning, but it really picks up in the end. I like to take my time, just sort of building the shapes, take my time, no worries. One of the downsides of being here right now, I feel like I'm locked into where I'm sitting and I can't get up and look. So every so often, I'm just gonna have to look in a mirror so I could see what it is I'm doing. Normally, I like to get up every so often, but I'm trapped in here. I use my finger a lot with pastel, but I also do that as well with oil. So now that I've got a little bit of something on there, I'm going to build out from this. So you saw that I used kind of like a brown to first knock in the dark of the eye, but with pastel, it's just like oil. You can now go in and go over with another color. So for me, little tiny measurements and stuff are very helpful to get to the bigger measurements. Kind of like a rule of thumb is never do any kind of judging of how far something is, how big it is, until you've got little shapes that you've slowly built up. And remember, I'm doing something from a photograph where if I had a model in front of me, I'd be thinking the same way. But what I'm doing is I'm doing observational drawing, which is a lot different than a lot of other styles of drawing that you may be familiar with. But I'm actually using what's in front of me as my main guide. My attempt is to kind of accurately get what's in front of me, what I see. One of the problems with doing pastel that's a little frustrating is if you don't have the right pastel, the color or the value, you have to kind of make a lot of compromises. So I'm looking at where this highlight is, then I'm judging the distance of the bridge of the nose. It's gonna go something like that. So what I'm doing right now and going through my head is I'm doing a lot of measuring. I'm doing a lot of taking my eye, maybe doing it without actually always using this, but in my head, I'm constantly checking plumb lines, verticals, and horizontals to see what's lining up. And sometimes I really need to actually use a pencil or something just to make sure things are lining up the way I want them based on what I'm seeing. So what's going on in my head is just good old drawing, measuring. Before I start going all the way over here and making lots of, commitments to what's happening here, I want to build a little bit more of a structure as I move slowly around. Kind of like, don't go too far away from where you're at so that you can actually make sense about what you're doing. When I'm doing this, if I ever feel like I'm a little unsure about where something's supposed to go, because that's all this is right now. I'm not actually painting this thing yet. It's just placement, where things go. And in order to be able to answer that question, where does everything go? I need to have something that's right? So I'm trying to get as many things right as possible. And so I'm using things like highlights, landmarks, anything that I can to keep checking where I'm at. So one of the important things to check is like at the end of the nostril, goes right behind where the tear duct is, right about there. Somewhere down the line, that nostril should match up right there. So I know as I get there, what I should be expecting. I'm building this nostril so that I can use it to judge a lot more from. All of this chicken scratchings on here so far, they really don't matter. I could play tic-tac-toe right now. It doesn't really matter what's going on, so long as I get these key spots. I'm just using it right now, these highlights and stuff. It's not really like important to me. What's important to me is getting these key darks and the separation between light and shadow correct. The shapes that it creates when you get a separation of light and shadow. That's all I'm really trying to do. I'm not thinking about a whole lot else. Hardest thing is finding the right pastel. So I'm looking at this distance here, trying to make sure I have this distance the way I want it. So what I need to do is get this pie-shaped triangle of light, and then I know I can finish off this eye. Time for me to get up, which I'm not allowed to do, so I'm going to use my little mirror. Using a mirror is constant for me. So I'm going to look for some key spots, and it's kind of like connecting dots almost. I look for key angles that are going to turn, and then I look for that point, and I just drop down. This is a pastel pencil, which I should have been using. It actually looks pretty good. Somewhere there's going to be where the beard meets with the mustache. So there's a little bit of light right here somewhere. And all I have to do is look where it drops. It's like a little piece of triangle here of light catching it. Now I know everything around it can just be filled in. And for now, I'm not worrying about what's in the shadow. Shadow doesn't really matter. It's easy to go back, fill in reflected light and all of that. That's just a distraction in the beginning. There's little spots of light I use as landmarks to get what I need. You'll notice I use my finger a lot because in a way, it's my way of blending to try to get the value I really need. It's more of a necessity of the fact that there's no such thing as enough pastels. You can never have too many pastels. Sometimes things become a hodgepodge, and it means that I'm not simplifying enough. So the best way to simplify is to fill in your shadows to see what's going on. Sometimes I don't do it enough. When you do these plumb lines, this is what this is when I do that. What it does is it keeps me grounded from going off into my own ideas about where things should maybe go, because we all have this tendency to just sort of think we always know where everything should go. But when you do this, it keeps bringing reality back to what's really happening in your model. So this model has a lot of dirt on his face because I put dirt on his face. This was a guy that was posing for another painting of mine. So he had a lot of charcoal that I put all over him. And trying to paint or draw charcoal on a face is a tricky thing because it can look like your values are off. So I have to ignore some of it. One time I was doing a painting of a girl and I wanted her to have strawberry jam all over her face. She was a little girl eating bread with strawberry jam, and I was calling it strawberry jam. So I put strawberry jam all over her face and photographed her that way. In a photo, it looked like strawberry jam, but when I started painting it, it looked like blood was all over her face. And I realized then, I'm not going to use strawberry jam anymore. If you put something else on a face. So I'm gonna do another drop. This guy's got a very large lower lip, very characteristic of his face. So I'm gonna put a little local color, and I'll be blending this with my finger to try to tone it down a bit, and then I'll work right into it again. It's a bit much. Now I need to go in there and reestablish like where some of the dark should go. Once again, I'm not really thinking about them as lips as much as I'm just kind of copying shapes that I see like a robot for placement's sake. I call it robot mode sometimes. Painting without a brain, my new course. If anyone has a question, don't hesitate. I'm just in robot mode right now, so.
Hi, Morgan. My name is Eduardo. Like, if you had to start right now and you were in your 20s and you had all your skills and connections wiped out, how would you go about getting your skills back?
There's this website called Proko.
Yeah, I was gonna assume you're gonna plug Proko.
Pretty much, I wouldn't leave Proko. It would just be all Proko.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Especially since now I have a whole course with them.
Right.
So everything in my course is everything I would have possibly needed that I got in art school.
Okay.
So I poured everything into it.
Right.
So now Proko is complete.
Right.
It was incomplete, now it's complete.
That's a good answer. So you would choose Proko over like a traditional atelier still?
Ateliers are great. I never went to one. I went to a little dirt storefront art school, and my whole education cost $3,000 probably total. And that art school that I went to is a fabric store now. So that's what I went to.
Okay.
But you don't have to spend a lot of money as much as I think now. It's super easy now to get what you need online. And the only thing you don't get online is the critiquing that I got for 3 years straight, you know. And my teacher would come around every single day, put a piece of tracing paper over and just destroy me every day. And it built up an understanding, you know, that I couldn't have gotten online. So that's the only thing I don't think you can get online.
And so you would try to find that teacher somewhere else to get the critique?
I would try to find somebody to critique you that knows something. Now, the online critiquing situation where you can do that, which is what I wish I could have done with my course. And I think Proko is going to be doing stuff like that, where at least you could get some feedback. It's the feedback that you need. You could study, but if somebody doesn't come along and kind of point out what's wrong still, it kind of can take years to get good. You know, whereas I got 3 years, I was already doing movie posters, painting full-size movie posters when I was 19 years old because I had that intensive correcting. And when I started working with art directors, they were nothing compared to my teacher. He was way harsher. So I was like, it's no big deal, you know? But if I was all by myself in my room just practicing, I'd feel like I couldn't handle an art director ever.
Okay,
you know?
I see that. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I had a question about your process. For this demo in particular, you started with like a general shape and then you started building up like the eye and stuff like section by section. Would you take a similar approach for like the bigger paintings where you focus in one area in specific and then move around, or do you kind of go jumping section to section?
Good question. I pretty much start somewhere and work my way out. My whole theory of how I was taught is work from the inside and get to the outside. Get your big shapes by working your small shapes. So the way I try to do that is just slowly build my way out. So like I started with the little girl's head in the window, like on that painting. I started with her, and then I just sort of finish as I go. You know, that's basically what I do.
For pieces like that, I assume that you do like small thumbnails or something like that to kind of like get the colors and stuff.
Sketches, yeah.
And I had one more question. One thing I really like about your work is kind of how much color you add to that it's like very dynamic, the color, without getting it like super muddy and stuff. Yeah, kind of how you have in the wood in the wagon is just not just one color. It has like a bunch of variety to it.
That's called broken color. So if you look at my paintings, I don't like to have too much of an area of one color. And I like to put broken, vibrating color of warms and cools everywhere. Whenever I can. And the reason I do that is I learned that from Norman Rockwell, studying his originals. And if you look at some of his old originals, every area is like a mosaic of colors, like little tiles of color. And when those work together, it works like digital. It actually is like, you know, like a screen on a TV where you get all the little cyan and the yellow, and it kind of vibrates and it looks real. Like, when you paint skin, if I just mixed one skin color, a shadow and a light, it would look plasticky. But if I were to put in some, some of the blues and the greens and the reds, and don't let it blend, but literally like next to each other with little tiles of color, it'll look more realistic than if I sat there and just did every little hair on my hand. The color of vibrating color is what actually brings realism into it, because nothing is one color. Nothing. None of us, So you try to incorporate that into everything. So I'm going to be doing that with this if I get to it. So here I'm having to mix my color because I can't find the perfect color. I use a razor blade, by the way, to try to shape these things so that they're usable. Right out of a package of pastels that are almost unusable because you can't get the shape you're wanting out of them. So I waste a lot just doing that to it. So I'll check myself a lot. If I'm not doing a demo, I check myself even more. The one part about pastel that I really do like is when I get to start doing larger areas and I use the side like this because I'm using big areas.
I have another question. Do you ever draw from imagination, like even thumbnails for your paintings or at any point in your sketchbooks maybe?
Do I do that? Yes. Before I hire models, I just make up sketches.
Okay.
I used to do that for a living too, it's kind of like storyboard type stuff, but it was for movie posters.
Right.
So using the mannequin, the whole Proko kind of stuff, that's what I would always use. That's, to me, when I look at all the basic materials that Proko has, they really gear yourself to being able to draw from imagination.
Right.
Because you need to be able to build up from the mannequin up,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that's what I usually use.
Okay.
Yeah. So drawing from imagination is good, but it can hinder you if you try to use those same tools to observe and get observational type drawing done. The two almost fight each other, and you have to be careful to know when to let that go and not use knowledge that you have to use in order to work from imagination. In my course, I probably go on and on about it like way too much, but to me, there's a lot of confusion as to when to use knowledge, which would be imagination or just pure knowledge, and when you just throw it out the door and don't use it for a while. You don't completely forget it, but it will actually hinder you from being able to observe objectively when you're constantly using all this knowledge you feel like you have to use, but it doesn't mean that's what's in front of you. If you're just trying to paint what's in front of you, it's a whole nother ball game. So in my course, I try to show how to balance those two warring things that go on in everybody's minds, because we all have knowledge that we've built up. Even when I talk to very beginners, and my course is for beginners, they've already got stuff that they already are having that's fighting them in their heads. And a lot of the instruction that I would have to give them would be deprogramming them from the knowledge they think they're supposed to be using when they're painting from the model or working from the model. And it's not. It's a whole nother skill set. It's a whole nother mindset.
I have a quick question. Why did you choose to block in the shadow with a warm tone?
Because on the overall, the warm is going to meet the core of going into the light. And he's a human being. So our shadows naturally are warmer. At least they should be, unless there's some blue light or green light in the room. Even reflected light isn't actually changing the natural local color of the fact that we're warm human beings, right? So I start off with a warm, but I'm going to interject some cool later. But if I started off with cool and it started to mix with the flesh color that's going into the light, it'd get muddy and dirty looking. So this is how I'm trying to keep a clean, beautiful kind of like flesh color, and then it goes into shadow. I'm going to go back and maybe add a little bit of cool without it interfering with what might go into the light areas that I want to keep clean. I'm building up to this moment when I'm going to start interjecting some cools into the light too. I'm honestly just in the first stage of this thing, where afterwards I want to go in there and matching some values, throw in a little bit more of broken color and it will start to come alive like immediately, this sort of thing, where it's like, it's so easy to do though, once this thing is finally fleshed out overall. Then that's the fun stuff. It's like the last 10 minutes is where all the fun stuff happens. This is just the hard work, just none of this is fun. It'll get fun in a minute. I also just don't have time. It's time consuming to change color, and I've got a limited amount of time on my hands right now, so that's another reason why I would probably have maybe tried. Not to mention, pastels don't give me a bajillion choices here. It's a little trickier. All right, I got to get to the other side of the face. So now that I've got something started here, now I'm just going to work my way around to get the overall measurement, and I'll look at certain spots and just judge distances like that. From here to here, from here to here, and then I make my decision here. It'd be easy for me to just whip this out really fast and just sort of get an overall quick thing, but I'm kind of like, I like trying to show the process here of the actual measuring. That take your time doing it, and you might actually get it a little bit closer, not totally closer, but a little bit closer. So I'm gonna look for a spot. That's where there's an angle that changes.
When you're putting down marks, are you almost thinking of them as abstract, as you would see them in the picture, like a 2D shape, or are you almost thinking of them structurally, as you would see the head?
Totally
in 3D
abstract.
volume?
I'm not using my brain at all. And what I mean by that is I'm not thinking about what it is at all. So therefore, I'm not really thinking structurally either, because that would require me to think too much, And I say that not to really be funny, but it really is what's going on, like in my brain, I'm just looking at shapes. And if I'm not looking at shapes, I'm gonna lose my voice, then it's probably going off. Like the areas that give me trouble are the ones where I haven't objectively just looked at it. Like, see that spot right there? That was an objective measurement. It wasn't an opinion. It was just like, I'm measuring. That's what it'll do. If you just start measuring more, you can't think about it structurally anymore. You're just trying to get things in the right place. I find once I get everything kind of laid out and in the right place, robot mode, not thinking, then like the last stage is when all the fun stuff of my knowledge can kind of be put into it with that structure of where it's all supposed to go. Like if I do that too early, it just gets out of control and eyes aren't lined up, and things aren't matching what my model has. It'll look like sort of like my model, but not enough, and I won't be happy with it. It's just, that's what makes me happy, is when it looks like the person I'm trying to paint. Doesn't mean everybody's got the same goal, but that's my goal.
Thank you.
All right, time to finally get to the bottom of the ear. Only a part of the ear is actually showing. It goes under the hat, so it looks like a small ear, but it's tucked under. All right, let's get that ear block down. So to do the hat, I'm gonna go ahead and make my photo a little smaller. If I wanted to go really, 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 really fast, I just make the photo smaller. I'm looking for some key points. In order for me to judge this, I have to find a key spot. It's right there. There's nothing like having some key areas that you've mapped out through measuring, and then you connect the dots. You really don't have to know anything. You just need to learn how to connect dots. Once I get my two spots, this is just like everything that's going to be going on in this head. Then I'll try relating them and getting them to work together. But I believe in mapping things a little bit more with measuring before I start doing that. Try to connect it now. Now that I know where these spots are, it's so much easier than just sort of willy-nilly, just, not having any any like actual measuring that you did. It's just a little bit more structured that way. Just gonna get this in before I go back into the head now and start having fun. I wonder how much dust I'm breathing in. Wow, that really went crazy. I'm gonna have to clean my hands. Let's see how much of it I can just blend in. So like it was pointed out earlier, I seem to be using a lot of browns and warm colors. And the reason is I'm blocking in right now. And if I had the time, it's so much easier to go back over that and build cools within the warms. Just need to blend this into the paper a little bit. I can see what's going on. All right, so I'm gonna go back in now and just sort of give it a little bit more of a finish now that it's all blocked in. This has literally been the first block in stage. This is all it's been. When you're doing a real large head like this is bigger than life. It's a weird thing to work on a head larger than life. It takes a little more time because everything looks bizarre. If a guy were to walk into this convention center and his head was this big, you'd all run. It would freak you out. But I'm freaked out by how big this head is. So you have to kind of like hold on, don't get thrown off. And that's why it was so important that I kind of measured things too, because when it's really large, it's just a big map. Just it's like as though this was a Persian rug. And I was trying to just match what I'm seeing in a Persian rug and not get thrown off too much. All right. So the first thing I would do right now is probably go around and soften a few more things, blend with my finger before I start really like going in with planes, and I'm going to start turning things a little bit more. This is all just like I said, just the beginning, the build up to it. I'm rushing this for the time's sake. If I had more time and I'm just in my studio, like when I was doing this for the video, I would literally take just as much time to measure out the scarf. I don't suddenly just get all crazy. I literally will just measure it out and get it all plotted. When you go crazy in the beginning and you don't do measuring, and then you feel, oh, I do have more time, you wish, oh, I wish I had spent more time just getting it more accurate. That's my personality. I'd rather have spent more time doing that. Whenever I have like a workshop of anything I've ever done, there's always those people who block things in super fast. And then they realize, oh, we have 4 hours still? And like, yeah, you should have spent more time just sort of doing what I just did. Like, now I've got, like 20 minutes maybe. 20 minutes on a nice block in is way better than 4 more hours on a lousy block in. So that's my personal take on it. The first thing I've noticed, of course, values. Values now have more to do with what's going on than anything right now, because obviously I haven't really paid that much attention to it. I've just been mapping it out. So you see how you don't really feel like his head is turning with planes. So that's like the first thing I have to do is try and find values in pastel. So that's a little too yellow. So once again, I'm going to be having to mix a little bit. So I wanted to build a plane here to get that feeling of the head going around. Here I'm going to have to put something like that down, clean my finger, and get the halftone that I really want. This is where it gets tricky. And obviously I haven't gone full value on the darks either. One of the things that I am limited by with pastel is that it just won't go as dark as you would like it to. Seems like the whole time I've been doing this, I just talk about how much I hate pastel or something. But I actually do like it. But there's plenty to complain about. And quite honestly, the funnest part about art is having lots of excuses why you're not good at it. It's always the materials, the reference. I have a dirty finger.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How would your approach to drawing something like that change if you only had like a handful of really high chroma pastels?
Oh, wow. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. It's impossible. I mean, I'm barely able to do this right now. I feel that way. Like, yeah. Like I wish I had that in like 5 values. Instead, it goes from there and then it goes red. It doesn't give me the same, so it's driving me crazy. I might as well just paint underwater or something. It's just like ridiculous. I don't want to do it, you know? So I wouldn't do pastel if I only had high chroma. I wouldn't do it. Can't mix like an oil, you know? Not like an oil. Because if you think you could use complements and stuff, it's not going to happen. So you're trying to trick me, but I'm not falling for it. That's a trick question. I know you're crying. So one of the things that takes time is to suggest things more. And I would like to suggest more going on here. The edges are also one of the last things. So there's a little bit of cooling it down a little bit. There's some kind of cool influence coming from the side. This is the kind of stuff that you just go towards the end, you start putting in, not in the last 3 seconds though. Thanks everybody.
Morgan Weistling's painting course will teach you everything you need to know to get started in oils. He covers materials, the grid method, observational drawing, color mixing, and way more. You'll learn to draw for painting and more about pastels. He teaches a step-by-step process to get a portrait in oil looking good, and he relates that info to painting digitally. If you want to take a look, head over to proko.com/Weistling.